Welcome to episode 50 of What's That Sound podcast. My name's Stu Watts, and today I talked with Chelsea Warner, who is a producer, songwriter, vocalist, and multi-instrumentalist who works on pop, R&B, and hip-hop. She's worked with Lil Durk, Kid Cudi, Guy Sebastian, some absolutely massive artists. In this episode, we talk about why it's so important to have an intensity and love for what you do to be successful, why having self-discipline to finish tracks is so important, as well as the importance of building relationships and why that is critical to being a professional in the music industry. For all that and heaps more, stay tuned. If you could do us a favor, share the podcast, send it out to someone in a DM, talk about it in a conversation, share it on your socials and your stories. That way you can spread the word about this podcast. We want to get this out to as many people as possible. I'm super passionate about the Australian producer and engineer community, and I want to share it with as many people as possible, and you can help by doing that. Make sure you are followed or subscribed on the podcast platform that you're checking this out on so you can stay up to date with everything new in What's That Sound. There's some cool stuff coming up. I'm going to be organising a live event. I know I've been talking about it for a while, but it will happen before the end of this year. It's going to have panels. It's going to have some great networking opportunities. I can't wait. So stay tuned for that. And if you have any suggestions or guest requests or anything like that, please send me an email, podcast.whatsthatsound@gmail.com. Any question you might have about the podcast, please reach out to me. I will get back to you. And apart from that, let's go. This is episode 50 with Chelsea Warner.
You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts.
Welcome everyone to another episode of What's That Sound. My name's Stu Watts. Today I'm here with Chelsea Warner. Chelsea, welcome to the episode.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
It's great to be here. And finally we linked up like we were saying before we started. It's taken us a while, but we got here and it's good to be here.
Yeah, totally.
So let's kick off with a little bit of an about you, who you are, what you do in the music industry.
Yeah, I'm a producer and songwriter. I started off as an artist, so I have a background in singing, in playing instruments as well. It's kind of always what I did growing up, playing instruments and writing my own songs. Eventually graduated into production, and now that's kind of my main bag. So yeah, I work a lot in pop, R&B, and hip hop, amongst other things.
Unreal. It's so good to hear. Well, take us back to, the early days when you were a little kid. What sort of music were you listening to back then? Was it all pop or what was it?
As a kid, I don't remember. It was probably pretty dictated by either my parents' music, what my dad would play around the house, which was a lot of 70s music.
Yeah, cool.
It's really his bag, or kind of what was on the radio at the time, so like pop music. But what was really formative for me was when I was in high school, I had a production teacher at a music school that I went to outside of school called Sister to Sister School of Singing, cool. Out in the hills. And he really put me on to OG hip hop and neo soul and Jay Dilla and Tribe and Erykah Badu, and that was really formative for me as I started developing my taste and my early sound as an artist and producer. And I think it's only evolved from there. So that was really formative.
Unreal. And do you remember if you talk about production, were you listening to the production or like what about it was it? Or was it like, new and what drew you to it?
Yeah, definitely. I was almost exclusively listening to the production because it was in a production context. I guess I remember I had a playlist on Spotify of songs that I wanted to know how to make. And a lot of the early process of me learning to produce was replicating songs that I loved and kind of almost being like insatiably curious. Like I can't rest if I don't know how to make this synth sound or something. And so, yeah, I would try and replicate, a lot of like, what would it have been? Like a lot of the Baduism tracks or a lot of Dilla's beats specifically. I used to just try and remake. So it was definitely production I was listening to at the beginning.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, obviously J Dill is a very like specific sort of a sound, and when you first hear that style of music, you're like, what is going on there?
I know. I was like, I need to
cool.
understand it all. I need to know everything.
Yeah. And so what did production look like back then for you? You know, what sort of things were you learning about, do you remember, in the early days?
Well, it started as an extension of me writing songs, because I think before I even picked up an instrument or opened a door or anything like that, I was always a singer. So yeah, all throughout my childhood and adolescence was writing songs. And yeah, I started using GarageBand to record them. And the only reason I knew GarageBand existed was because when I would go shopping with my mum and we were at like the Good Guys or something, I would go and play on the MacBooks and play on GarageBand and like drag loops in and stuff and feel like I was making a sick beat while she was shopping. So when I started writing songs on like piano or guitar, I knew that that was a thing, that you could record them on this program. I think I had just bought myself my first computer and I had GarageBand. So yeah, it started as just a way to record my songs. And then as I moved to Ableton, I started to get a lot more curious about production as a broader concept.
And so, you know, you talk about starting off doing songwriting. What did that look like? Were you kind of just like writing songs for yourself? Were you writing with friends? Tell us a little bit about that.
I almost feel like a lot of producers need to have that kind of like studio rat gremlin lone approach and to put in enough time to be able to like, you know, get better at it. So definitely I spent a lot of time alone after school, late at night, producing. I loved writing with other people as well though, like friends that I had from the singing school, like other singer friends. Or yeah, I would write songs sometimes with a couple friends of mine from school as well. And that was like my first taste of, I guess, like collaboration. And was always super open to that. And it became, a pretty integral part of the process for me. Once I had left school and I went to study music because I knew I wanted to do it as a job, but I didn't know how. So I studied it. And from there started meeting industry people who would then put me in songwriting sessions. And then kind of from then it was like very predominantly collaboration based.
Yeah, great. And what are your memories of school? Do you remember it being like a positive time? Did you like thrive there, or was it kind of like, this is a bit kind of, you know, it's holding me back, or what were you feeling back then? Do you remember?
I mean, I was having this conversation with someone yesterday about how insanely formative to the person you become the like year 10 to 12 years are. And yeah, I look back now pretty positively. Like I definitely didn't feel like there were many people like me. And at the time that was kind of hard because I sometimes felt like, am I weird? Am I odd for like wanting to do the things that I want to do? And just like had a lot of question marks about my self in general, my sense of self. And that's probably pretty normal. But yeah, just like classic high school teenager stuff, I guess. But no, I felt pretty supported by like the stuff I did outside of school, or like my family, which I look back on very gratefully. So yeah, it was never like a question of whether I could pursue it or not, which I'm so grateful for, because I think I don't want to take that for granted. Like the fact that I always just went, I want to do this and shot for it. I think I owe a lot to like the support network of that time, regardless of like all the weird identity and, you know, self relationship stuff that I was working through.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be something that's so hard to figure out. Like even, you know, I used to get picked on for the style of music that I listened
What
to. And
style?
I'm sure I was into like punk rock. So it was like,
Oh my God.
I was like
That's
full
so
on
cool
into it. Yeah, but it wasn't though. Like everyone was like into like, I don't know, like even metal, like the disparate, like the intensity of like opinions was so big in high school. So you can't escape that. But then, like you said, if you're into something that's so niche, you're kind of like, why does it feel like I'm weird for doing this? It's a really weird thing to battle. But like you said, the support network around you and having people that you can bounce off and just like be passionate about is so important.
Even just a couple people or like one person even who just tells you, yeah, like go on, do it.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Why not? Because it's so easy to not think that it's possible. But it's so weird to me that punk was like uncool. I always thought punk rock was the sickest music. And like everyone who I thought was cool in school was like so into that. And I don't know.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Time and place thing maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. But talk us through like, you started going into songwriting rooms and writing with professionals and things like that. Did you have, mentors that were kind of guiding you through the process, or was it more like go in and just see what happens?
It's a bit of both. At the beginning, the first songwriting sessions I did were all came from the first like publishing deal that I've signed, which was an incredibly lucky moment, an important moment for me. At uni, my publisher Universal came through and did like a guest lecture, and I had met Arwen, the A&R, and she really took me under her wing and started putting me in sessions as an artist, actually. And then I guess because I was floating around like multiple days a week doing different songwriting sessions with people I hadn't met before, I started to, I guess, see that was a thing and that people did that all the time. And that was how a lot of songs are written. And then eventually I started wanting to do more sessions, first off as the writer in the room, like for another artist. And then eventually as a producer. And I remember when I started running sessions as a producer, it was just like everything clicked and I felt so just engrossed in what I was doing and so happy. And it just felt really right for me. So now it's kind of settled on a bit of an oscillation between those couple roles of like production and writing, sometimes singing on stuff too, particularly with pitch tracks. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I owe a lot, as anyone would, I'm sure, because like no man is an island, but I owe a lot to like the first few people who like threw me in those spaces. And then I had to kind of like find my feet within it, I guess.
And I love what you said about like as soon you just felt at home when you started producing. I'm sure everyone that's listening to this can resonate in whatever field they're like passionate about. It's like as soon as you do that thing that you love to do, it might be multiple things. Usually it is, but it's like, man, this is it. I got to keep doing this. This is the best.
Yeah, you had the same kind of thing. You feel like when you produce?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. Nice. Yeah, working with the artist and like, trying to unpack what they are and, what they want to say and all that sort of stuff. So it's just like the best feeling to get to the end and be like, we did this, we created this. And, you making sure that they're stoked the whole way along is super important to me.
Yeah, totally. Did you ever do artist stuff?
How do you mean? Like as an artist?
As an artist, yeah.
Yeah. I do a bunch of different things, working. I played in bands for 10, 15 years and then had my own solo thing and, worked with other artists kind of alongside it for close to 10 years now. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
So you've been involved in lots of different parts of the songwriting process too.
Yeah, big time. It's like, for writing with my own bands, I was always one of the primary songwriters in pretty much every band. And then, helping the artists with their songwriting stuff. Yeah, it's kind of just, it goes in, it kind of just like, it becomes part of the whole process. It doesn't become like this individual piece, It's like, it's ingrained in the whole lot to me, I think.
Totally. Yeah, you can't separate it. It's all different sides of the same coin and all works towards the same product.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So talk us through what sessions look like these days. Is there kind of a common thread between all of your sessions, or they all kind of look completely different?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixture, but I think it kind of goes in seasons for me. I kind of try and hone in on what I feel like I really want to be focusing on at any given point in time. Like, do I want to be doing predominantly pitch sessions if I'm feeling really in that world at this given moment? Or sometimes there'll be artists that I do whole projects with, and in that case, obviously, that's kind of what I spend a lot of time doing. But in amongst that, there's always ad hoc random sessions with artist friends of mine or like people that I love, because essentially everyone I am friends with and hold dear is a producer or writer or artist in some way. So I really love just hanging out with those friends as well at the studio, which always, it tends to result in a song too. But yeah, very much oscillating between many different kinds of sessions at any given point in time.
Yeah. So do you feel like you're always in the creative zone then, or, is it more like, today I feel like creating?
Oh, no, always. And I think I have a very all or nothing kind of approach. Like, I don't know, I can be very intense about things. If I'm doing something, then I'm doing it. And sometimes that is great and really productive. And other times it's like, okay, girl, like chill, like go to bed, eat a meal, have a snack.
Yeah.
Get a hobby, but I don't know. It's very intrinsic to who I am and what I think about when I first wake up in the morning. And right now, I feel nothing but joy from that. Sometimes that leads to burnout, I suppose. But it can be very self-sustaining if you just love what you do. And I almost feel like that's the most important thing ever. Like you can learn everything if you want to enough. And usually you only want to if you like the process of learning it. So yeah, no, I'm very bad at turning it off. It's a good and bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you feel like that then you've had to train yourself to turn it off? And how did you realize that maybe that wasn't, I don't know, healthy or, or do you feel like, no, I'm good with it?
I think it's necessary. Like I don't know, maybe my mind will change on this as I grow older and wiser, but I can't imagine how you would do something like this if you didn't have that. Like if you didn't have that, what's the best word? I guess hunger, but also just like intensity of focus and like love. Because it's pretty, I find it pretty consuming and demanding almost of just like, always being engaged and like that. I think since I've been working as a producer and writer as my full-time thing, which has probably been like 5-6 years, I don't think I've ever felt like I didn't have something to do. Like the to-do list never ends. So yeah, in order to like exist within that and have those expectations on yourself and always, to the best of your ability, be rising to the occasion, I think you have to have that intensity and like love for it. And I'm sure there comes a point where you also need to know what fills your cup up. And yeah, I'm learning that and getting better at that as I get to know myself, I think. But yeah, you need it, I reckon.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you do. Like if you don't have it, you'll just be flip-flopping, and like we see it all the time, like with different people that you work with that probably aren't like all in, like they take it or leave it, and then it just becomes, a fun thing maybe, but for people that are like so serious about it, so in love with the craft and whatever that is, whether it's playing an instrument or producing or whatever that is, like you have to live it. I think I agree 100% with you. Yeah. And so when you're, first of all, do you look at songwriting and producing as like two separate things? And do you have different ways that you kind of get in the zone? Does something trigger you to create, to write lyrics or music or produce? Like what sort of things like influence you to do those two different things?
I mean, as we kind of touched on, I do feel like it is two sides of the same coin. You know, if the aim is to make a song, then the production has to be informed by the song. And sometimes the song is informed by the production as well. So I do feel like they're pretty linked. I suppose, you know, in different formats, like a producer making a beat tape or a mixtape or something that is more instrumental and production oriented. In that case, you know, it's the same. Maybe the common thread is like a journey that it takes you on, and like whether that's a literal story through lyrics or something, or like a harmonic journey or a musical journey through a beat or like a instrumental or a composition or something. But yeah, for the most part with what I do, even when I'm making beats like for other artists, for rappers or something like that, I always think of the song of it all. It's never going to be just like, you know, a 30-second loop or something like that. It's always going to have sections and have dynamic ebb and flow. And then what was the second part?
Well, what influences you in can it be anything? Can it be like hearing a song or seeing an image of something? Like what kind of allows you to go, oh, I need to write because of that. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, I feel like being a songwriter is less about a thing that you do and more about a thing that you are, because you just kind of move through the world always looking for inspiration, subconsciously or not. Sometimes you can sit down and be like, okay, I'm writing a song now. I'm clocked in and it works great and you get, you know, an amazing idea. And I do try to look at inspiration as not something you just wait on, something that you can create, because otherwise, like that, you need to be able to harness it whenever you want. And like, I guess that is a part of creative mastery and like self-mastery too, being able to summon that and always have ideas, always be brimming with ideas. But I think a lot of that comes from, just the way you move through the world and see the world as like everything is potential song inspiration. Keep a note in your phone, keep a notebook, keep a mental note. I just think everything is art, you know, everything.
Do you have favorite ways of like keeping memories of, you know, song ideas or lyric ideas or anything like that? What's your favorite kind of like, I'm always writing notes, always doing voice memos. What does that look like to you?
I'm going to pull up my notes app and just see if like I can remember where any of these ideas came from.
Cool.
Because I often just have like a word and sometimes it makes no sense, but sometimes it's like, oh, that's a whole concept. A lot of the time it'll be like a voice memo from like first thing in the morning or after getting out of the shower or something. Like those are always so funny because sometimes you listen back and it makes absolutely no sense what you're singing.
I know,
do you have that?
I know. Oh, all the time. You've got like a melody that you've hummed and you're like, I don't know where the timing of that is. Like, how is that even a thing? Like,
you got to you got to give yourself the 2 and 4. Otherwise it doesn't hit. But yeah, literally like I'm just scrolling through and so many of these became songs. A lot of them became like pitch songs. Okay. So I remember that this particular period I was in London. Actually, no, I just went from Italy to London and I just have a note called like Renaissance Woman with like a bunch of, and then that started as a title. I think because I went to like the Sistine Chapel or something.
Yes.
And then it's like became just like a bunch of word vomit in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that like the most common way that you would find yourself like taking notes if you have some sort of inspiration in the streets or whatever?
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like word association and getting on a wavelength of ideas is really strong and cool. So sometimes it'll be like, I'm just sitting down and there'll be 10 titles or something that come and just write them all down. Sometimes they come out of thin air. I really like using randomwordgenerator.com. That's really cool.
That's great.
To just see where your brain connects the dots. Honestly, it's low-key better than ChatGPT because ChatGPT I love using for like really specific things if I can't figure out how to say something.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I find ChatGPT to like just chuck out the most generic things like and it's so repetitive as well. It's like, come on. It's cheesy.
I really like starting with titles, and you just cannot ask ChatGPT for a song title because it'll be like supernova, mystical, flash. And I'm like, what? Like it just does too much.
It does,
tries too hard.
Hey, thanks so much for listening so far. There is plenty more to come, so don't go anywhere. I just wanted to let you know that this podcast is made completely independently by myself with no sponsors. So if you like what you hear and you would like to show your support, you can send a donation to the PayPal link, paypal.me/whatsthatsound. The link is also in the show notes. Thanks so much for your support, and let's get back to it. You've mentioned a couple of times there's a difference between, writing for pitching as opposed to doing a production, session or something like that. Can you explain to me why you see that as a difference?
Well, I suppose, there are some similarities too, because if you're in the room with an artist, then you're kind of molding the idea to them and to their artistry and what they want to express in real time with them there giving you feedback on it. The pitch process is that, but just a couple steps removed, I suppose. But I feel like the focus with an artist in the room is more about like, for me at least, emotionally being on the same page and connecting on a human level. That's really important. Sometimes it's less about sonics or something being really ear-catching, although that is important too. But with pitching, you're sending songs to an A&R usually who's getting a bunch of songs. And so there has to be, the whole package, and maybe even the focus should be on sonics. So like production and melody so that it stands out. And then, the story that's being told can kind of, on repeat listening or on closer listening be unpacked, but you have to like catch their ears first. And a lot of the pitching I do is in Korea, so that's just a different type of songwriting altogether.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Are there things in sessions that you like must have so that you can create to the best of your abilities, or are you pretty easy? You're pretty much like, just get me in a room and I'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm pretty easy from the years of doing sessions anywhere and everywhere, and also traveling and doing sessions. Sometimes you're just in the most random rooms, or like, just in a different studio setup every day, that kind of thing. If I'm in Sydney at my studio, I love just having like a nice cup of tea and like a snack and set the lights on like a pink color, like my LEDs, and I'm pretty good to go. Yeah, I'm not cool. too fast, yeah.
Yep. And in terms of like tools, like do you have a specific synth that you like to fall back on, or do you need a keyboard with you and a guitar with you or something like that? What does that look like?
True. I don't need anything except probably my laptop and my hard drive with my samples. Even still, like I could definitely make do with Splice or something. But I really like my sample library, and ideally like a MIDI keyboard. Even if it's small, I have a tiny launch key that I take with me when I travel. And that's kind of enough, but you can always draw stuff in. Sometimes parameters are really helpful. So if you don't have certain gear, I do love we have a Prophet at our studio, and I rely on that quite a lot for sounds when I'm there. It's fun.
Yeah, beautiful. What are your favorite things to work on, like whether that's stylistically or, elements in a production or vocals, or what are your favorite things?
I love that question so much. Definitely, I'm very harmonically driven. Like I love a good chord progression. Even if it's really simple, I don't care if it's simple, but I just want it to make me feel something. And I find that that's always the first thing I need. Like some producers start with drums or something like that. I always start with chords, some sort of a harmonic element. Usually when you're in the room with an artist as well, then you can loop those chords and they can start writing while you flesh out the beat, But one of my favorite parts of the process is always vocal arranging. With my background as a singer, I love just sitting there for hours and going into the void and coming up for air and having this vocal arrangement that I can then mix and make sound really pretty. I think it just elevates the song and is always the final step for me. Doubles, harmonies, and ad-libs bring everything together, and I love it so much. It's like what I'm here for.
Absolutely. It's so true. It's like you get to a point where like you start somewhere and you're like, don't know where this is going. Like this could be anything. And then all of a sudden I feel like it hits this point and you've got something that you can actually really build on. And then it feels like, okay, I've got a song now,
That's so true. Yeah, the unknown feeling when you start, which is kind of, sometimes it's daunting and sometimes it's really exciting. But then, yeah, you're so right. There's always a moment where it kind of clicks or something.
Yeah. And then you feel like, you're kind of like, okay, I can work with this one. Or if it's not working, you're like, okay, this isn't going anywhere. I'm just going to scrap it and start again.
Yeah.
Take a break maybe.
Oh my God. I try and force myself to finish ideas, even if they're bad. It's not easier said than done sometimes, but God, there's nothing worse than the feeling of like the dead weight of a half-finished idea. It's so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you kind of have techniques to get you through that, where you might feel like, oh, maybe this isn't going to work, but how do you push through? Or is it just practice,
Like masochism sometimes?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Just being like, no, you will stay here and finish it. Sometimes maybe this is just workaholism, but just being really intensely focused on what you're doing, and I'll sometimes be like, okay, give myself little, is this psycho? Give myself little ultimatums of like, okay, you can go and like do this. Stop that sentence again. You could go and do this thing that you really want to do once you've done this. And sometimes if I don't discipline myself like that, it can be really hard. But yeah, sometimes I'm better than others.
Yeah, I think it's just, it is as much that as like, it's funny because like I'm really bad at writing by myself, like, and I always find that I get to those points where I've got like an idea and it's fine, but I never push it to that like next level. That's why I love collaborating so much. That's probably why I love being a producer, is just working with other people and helping them get to that end point. But it is something that you need to have discipline with and push yourself and practice. It's because like, it's like anything. If you want to be good at something, you got to push past these hard points, and that is what builds that muscle and the resilience and allows you to get better and better and better at that thing.
Do you feel like collaboration helps to push past those writer's block moments for you?
I think the collaboration thing is like, it's just easier to bounce off and, have someone to go, what if we go here? What if we go there? I feel like I'm not tied to this one idea as much when I'm writing by myself. It's kind of like this soul idea that I can't break away from, and having someone to bounce off and go, what if we do this? And then just going with it. It feels easier to me for some reason.
Yeah, totally. I'm a big fan of following every idea in a room. The yes and thing, so important. And that can really put you in an amazing flow where nothing's a no, nothing's a hurdle. You're just like always moving. And only collaboration can really do that.
Yeah, I think so. What's a great session look like to you? Like when you finish up a session, whether that's songwriting or producing or anything like that, when you get to the end of the day and you're like, that was sick.
Usually if we find that flow point, that like pretty much exactly what you were describing before, of that moment where it kind of falls into place or clicks. And that could be really early on. That could be in the first 10 minutes. That can be like, usually for me, it's a title or a concept once that comes, or a production direction. Like I can hear the full production in my head, and now it's just about actualizing it. Yeah, usually if I feel like it's kind of flowed to that point really well, then that's an amazing day. But also, I will say sometimes I feel like if an idea makes you work for it, that doesn't mean it's a worse idea. So yeah, I try and end every day with a full song, regardless of what I think about the song. And then usually if I'm excited to chuck it on the second I leave the studio in my headphones, that's probably a great day.
Yes, that's a great point. I love that. Yeah. Well, then on the opposite side, like what's a bad day? You know, when you feel like maybe that was really difficult, or, you know, what do those sorts of sessions look like?
I mean, I feel like most of the time when I experience a block or something like that, it's usually when I'm by myself and I'm trying to write to a track for pitch, or I'm trying to produce up a song or finish production on something, or anything really, any part of the process. I find that more by myself than in sessions necessarily. But like, yeah, I don't know. I really try not to get to the end of the day and like write it off or something. I always think you can turn it around, even if it's like, you know, even if it's connecting with the artist in the room or whatever, and just like, you know, becoming friends or something, or like, you know, grabbing food or whatever. I still feel like that's a success. And yeah, I try not to resign to the day, even if it like by lunchtime is feeling hard. Like you can always turn it around as long as you register that and probably acknowledge it in the room too, and say, okay, what should we change? Should we start something else, or should we change something about this idea? Usually you can turn it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think the communication aspect of those on those days is so important, and that's when it can be really difficult too. Like if you're feeling like in a bit of a funk about it maybe, or you're like, this isn't really going where I thought it would. That is when it's difficult to have those conversations like and acknowledge that, but that's when it's the most important time to do that.
Yes, because I almost guarantee that the other person will be like, yeah, same.
Yeah.
And then you could be like, okay, Mad, like, should we change something? You know? It's communication all the way. Big fan of over communication every time.
Yeah. Yep. And so let's kind of zoom out a little bit and talk more business/music industry type areas. What kind of things, I guess, surprised you about, you know, being a professional and in the music industry?
Yeah, from a business standpoint, it's so funny. I feel like the things that are the most true in life in general are always the things that are almost cliches. You know, stuff like it truly is so about relationships and people. I've just found like every step of the way I can like pinpoint, you know, a key person who has been really integral to that part of the journey. And I feel like that being the main priority before anything else has been so helpful for me, not only as like a human, you know, enjoying my life and building friendships and like really true friendships with other people in music, whether it's on the industry side or not. That's so true, and probably like can be a little surprising. I think sometimes as a producer as well, it's like I kind of mentioned before, you need to spend a lot of time refining and honing your craft by yourself. But, you know, if you don't get out there and meet people and really build your circles, sometimes, I think that limits you a little bit. So yeah, a little surprising maybe the extent to which it really is all about relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make such a good point because, you know, us being like the nerds that we are, we love to just sit on our computer and like nerd out on stupid plugins and whatever else it might be. And we can get really stuck in that and get in the weeds for weeks. And then we come up for air and we realize, what the hell am I doing, sort of thing, you know, and especially at the start when you're still learning and still trying to figure out the industry and stuff like that. That to me is what you said, having those relationships and being able to bounce off people and say, hey, this is where I'm at. Like, what do you recommend? Or whatever that conversation might look like. That's where those relationships and stuff come in so crucial.
So true. Yeah, totally agree.
Yep. And so when it comes to the same sorts of things with like industry and business and stuff, what are the sort of things that you've had to really work at and, you know, have found potentially a struggle?
It's a good question. I mean, I've never had a real job, so I don't know if this applies to just jobs in general, but the feeling of constant urgency with everything has been something that sometimes can get a little overwhelming maybe. You know, we've also never been more connected to people and we've never known more people in terms of like human history. So the fact that you could have hundreds of people that you work with just like a phone call away or like a button away means that you're really reachable. And for me, just like prioritizing and discerning how to spend my time from, you know, on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis has really been a journey for me. Also trying to, because it's a marathon, you know, we're not sprinting here to some sort of finish line. We're trying to build a career and sustainable path. Trying to also keep your cup full, like we touched on before, and balancing the kind of reality that you can constantly be working if you want to. And that's just like, you know, having your own business or being your own boss in some way that's applicable to anything like that. But yeah, everything that you get asked to do is always like, every label is always asking for it urgently. Every artist needs it for a show tomorrow, like all of that kind of thing. So managing your mental within those expectations has been a journey for me.
Yeah, and I think like for me, practicing the ability to zoom out and be like, this is just one piece of the puzzle. Like, you know, what I'm doing is super important. And that's the hard part is like everything is so important, right?
Yes.
Like every little thing matters.
Yes.
But it's just one piece and there'll be another piece tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. But it feels like when you're in those moments where like, fuck, I really need to nail this, that it can be like difficult, but you have to be able to take a step back and go, that's all right. It'll be fine. Like,
I love that. This is just one piece. There'll be another piece tomorrow. Yeah, that's really, damn. That's cool.
So then is there things that you would like, if you look back that you might be like, oh, I probably could have done that a bit differently or, you know, whether that's specific things or big picture things?
I feel like I'm really grateful for where I'm at right now. And I kind of look back on everything as being an important step to getting there. So not to just like give you a cop-out answer and be boring, but I do think that everything, even if it was like, even if I could have made a better choice or something at the time, everything is probably an important part of the journey. I mean, I think choosing to back myself sooner as a producer and multi-hyphenate would have been great. I could have probably been doing that from the start because a lot of people do. But I guess, not necessarily seeing many producers that were like me until I did this songwriting camp that KLP put on called Ricochet with amazing women and like non-binary people producing, where I saw some of my favorite producers in the country like Maribel Vetterborn and Nina Geraci producing for the first time. I was like, and I was invited to that as a producer. From that moment on, I started calling myself a producer and led with production, even though I had been doing it for years beforehand. So that would have been cool to probably back myself a little earlier, but all important, cutting your teeth stuff.
Yeah, 100%. So do you think that maybe you shut yourself off from opportunities possibly before that moment?
I feel like probably more so I could have felt more, I could have just supported myself more, which I don't know. Who's to say if that impacted like what I was doing at the time or whatever, because I think I was around 17 when I did that camp. So that was still really necessary. Like all the work I had been doing before that was really necessary growth and skill building. So yeah, who's to say if, I don't think I necessarily cut myself off from opportunities so much as just like could have felt more, more confidence. Yeah.
Great. Well, I mean, you're obviously doing well now. Do you feel like that confidence and that comfortability, I guess you could call it, plays into how well you go on a day-to-day doing your job?
Yeah, totally. I'm sure you find the same thing with music making in general. When you feel confident and comfortable and just back yourself and your ideas, you always make better stuff. Like I just feel like there's very little room in the process or like just in a songwriting space, in a collaboration space for doubt. Doubt is just like the enemy. I'm trying to stomp out all doubt. It sucks. I hate it. It needs to go. It needs to go. So yeah, confidence is key. And like it's important.
And I think on the back of that is like when you realize that in yourself and you start to feel better at just like doing your job and stuff like that, you start to see it in other people, and then you can kind of realize the signs that maybe they're cutting themselves off or shutting themselves down and things like that. And it's like, no, go with this. Like be confident in what you're doing right now, because then you're kind of uncovering something that maybe the artist hadn't seen in themselves previous to that as well. And that is a big part of our job as producers too.
Yeah. And I mean, like having a really open mind to what you can learn and what you can do better is so important to me. I think curiosity is probably my number one value just in life in general. So yeah, I guess walking that line between like backing yourself and knowing that you got it and that you're sweet, and also having a really open humility about, things that you can learn from others and that you can learn in your process every single day. Learning something is, so important. Walking that line.
Yeah. It's to me, something that's amazing about the technology that we have these days and the ability to find answers and stuff like that. That is super fun to be able to be like, man, there's just always something to learn. There's always going to be a new plugin. There's always going to be a new technique that someone cooks up. Like, it's just the best.
Oh my God. Yeah. The day you stop learning is the day you stagnate. I feel like you just gotta, and we have so many answers, like you said, at our fingertips. YouTube University is so, it's so true, so real. I learned to produce thanks in large part to YouTube and the internet, honestly.
Yeah. So this has been unreal. Thank you for joining me. I want to kind of see what the next like few months are looking like for you. What's coming up? What are you excited about?
No, it's been so good to chat. Thank you. I've been traveling a lot more over the last couple of years for for music, for writing and production. So yeah, in the next couple months, I'm planning to get overseas again. I try and go to the States a couple times a year, and I'll try and get back to Korea as well. And yeah, I haven't been to Scandinavia yet, and a lot of writer friends that I have and producers that I work with remotely or have met at camps are over there. So be really sick to get there. But while I'm in Australia, just working on projects with artists, I love doing bodies of work, and there's no greater honor than being trusted with that. So yeah, just kind of working on the projects that I'm doing with artists at the moment, and yeah, staying afloat, going for walks, drinking coffee, decaf though, trying to be a person and fill up my cup amongst all of this as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful stuff. Well, before we finish up, I always like to finish with some pieces of advice that you have for people in the first kind of 5 years of doing this. First of all, for producers, engineers, songwriters, and then secondly, for artists that might be checking this out.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful question. Well, the first 5 years is an interesting one because I feel like saying yes to everything is such a cheat code and so important, and something that I really got a lot of value out of at the beginning. It reaches a point where that starts being not helpful and maybe even detrimental, talking about, choosing where your energy goes and things like that. But yeah, I just remember being like 17 or something and being so hungry and so excited to start building my career that I just wanted to do everything. It wasn't even a case of like, oh, I don't really want to do that, but I'll do it anyway. It's like, no, I wanted to do everything. So that was really helpful for me because you do kind of like find the things that you gravitate towards more or feel a pull to and are naturally not even better at, but more inclined towards and enjoy more. Because like we said, joy is the key to having staying power in anything. So yeah, do everything until that stops being helpful for you. And then artists, I mean, obviously my path has moved away from artistry a little bit. But yeah, I think pushing yourself to try and always be in that creative state, to always be receptive creatively, as much as possible. Everyone's different. Everyone receives inspiration differently. And some people, they write, less, but they need that time to generate those ideas. Or yeah, every process is valid. But for me, I think like the more you write, the better your work gets. And the more you just like healthily disconnect from what you're doing in the sense that like it's not that deep. Like not every song you're making has to be it or has to be a single for you or something, but just writing all the time and allowing yourself to finish ideas. I honestly think like movement just helps so much with like doubt and refining your skills. So yeah, keep it pushing, always write. It's probably my advice.
Unreal. I love it. Well, once again, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
It has been awesome. And where can people find you? I'll have all the links in the show notes, but where can people check you out?
The best place at the moment is Instagram at Chelsea Warner Music because I'm sharing everything that I'm working on. You'll be able to check out all my releases as well as, stuff that I'm just producing and sharing for fun, where I am in the world, all of that.
Great. Well, thank you again. And thank you to everyone for checking it out. If you made it this far, thank you so much. You can follow us everywhere. You can share our stuff. That really helps spread the word about the podcast. There is some cool stuff coming up in terms of live events. I am planning on it, but there's been a few things that are happening before then, but it should be one before the end of the year, just to let you all know. But yeah, thank you again for checking this out. Thank you. And we'll see you next time on What's That Sound podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to What's That Sound? Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.